What's up, guys? So today we're going to be talking about the largest armored car robbery that happened on the road in United States history. It's also the second largest, or some might say the first largest armored car robbery just in general in U.S. history. And then the seventh largest cash robbery in U.S. history. So this happened right outside of Rochester, New York, in the suburb Henrietta. This happened on the corner of Bailey Road and East River Road at a buy rights, which is now closed down. It's not there anymore. On June 26, 1990, this armored truck rolled up at 7:10 p.m. to this convenience store and ended up getting robbed of $10.8 million. So in today's money, that's about $25.3 million. So yeah, and they just got away. Well, almost got away. Almost all of them got away, I should say. Like I said, June 26, 1990. This truck leaves an undisclosed location in Rochester, New York at 6:45 a.m. They're headed to the Federal Reserve in Buffalo, New York, carrying $10.8 million. Not many people know about this delivery. They want to keep this on the download because these bills are untraceable. If this gets robbed, they can't do anything about it. There's no way to trace the bills back to them. At about 7:10 a.m., the armored truck rolls into the buy right parking lot. This was an unauthorized but not uncommon stop for the armored truck. The driver opted to stay in the truck while the one security guard went into the convenience store and ended up buying food for them. When the security guard was in the convenience store, little did she know that the armored truck was getting robbed. Albert Ranieri was the driver of the armored truck. That'll be important for later. And let's call the security guard that was in the store Mary. As the armored truck was parked in the parking lot, two armed robbers got out of a gray van parked nearby. One robber, let's call him Robert 1, went up to the driver's side of the armored truck and pointed a shotgun at Albert's head. There was a conveniently broken porthole in the driver's side where he could point the shotgun clearly at Albert's head without any security being in his way. Robert 2 then got out of the gray van, then headed to the passenger side of the armored truck. He had the keys to the armored truck somehow and unlocked the passenger side door and got in and proceeded to point a pistol at Albert's head. When he points his pistol at Albert's head, Robert 1 then lowers his shotgun and gets into the driver's seat of the gray van. About 4 to 5 minutes after Mary entered the convenience store, she exited with sandwiches for her and Albert. She entered the back of the armored truck and got a surprise when she saw Robert 2 sitting in the back of the armored truck with a gun. Robert 2 threw her to the ground in the back of the armored truck and banded her arms and legs with plastic handcuffs. Robert 2 then climbed back into the front of the armored truck, pointed a gun at Albert, and told him to drive to a specific location. This location, depending on the sources, was anywhere from between half a mile and about a mile and a half away from the convenience store. This was going east on Bailey Road. Robert 2 then made Albert pull off on a service road that was conveniently placed right on the other side of a hill and also about 300 feet into dense brush. The spot that they pulled off to was also adjacent to a cornfield, and it looked as though branches were cut around, as they knew that a car was going to have to be in this area, so they made room and made sure it would be able to fit. While the armored truck was going to this location, the gray van was also following behind. When they arrived at the location, Robert 1 and Robert 2 helped band Albert and Mary together and then place them outside the van. They saw a second van pull up that was blue, and another accomplice got out. Let's call him Robert 3, just for convenience. They then were also blindfolded at the new spot after they saw the second van pull up. All Robert and Mary heard was a bunch of swift movement, not much communication in between the robbers, but just mostly them taking the money out of the money truck and putting them into the van. So the $10.8 million was in $1 million hundreds, $8 million were 20s, and then $1.8 million were smaller denominations, and it weighed a combined total of anywhere from 1,500 to 1,700 pounds. According to Albert and Mary, it took the robbers about 5 to 10 minutes to load the $10.8 million into the back of the blue van. According to Mary's testimony, she was very scared for her life and didn't know if she was going to come out of this alive. After Mary heard the robbers drive away, she tried to free herself from the plastic handcuffs. After about 15 painstaking minutes, she ended up getting free, but she couldn't get her partner free. After this point, Mary was free from the handcuffs. She got back into the armored car, drove back to headquarters, and notified her company of what happened. This happened in about all 40 minutes. The police were notified at about 7:40 a.m. So from 7:10 to 7:40 a.m., these robbers got away with all of the money, and actually it took them about only 5 to 10 minutes to rob it. The police started investigating immediately. The day after, authorities found the blue van about 5 miles away from the original robbery location with about $13,000 in smaller denominations left in it. Alright, so since I suck at explaining things, we made a GTA demonstration, which is kind of fire. So, the truck pulls up at about 7:10. The female guard gets out, goes into the convenience store to get the sandwiches. And then in a nearby parked gray van, one robber gets out, points a shotgun at the guard through a conveniently broken porthole. Then robber 2 gets out of the silver van, goes up to the side of the van, gets in, then points a pistol at the driver. Then the security guard comes out of the store, and held by gunpoint. She was tied in plastic handcuffs and then put into the back of the security van. Then robber 1 gets back into the gray truck. Robber 2, while pointing a gun, instructs the driver to drive to a certain location while the gray van follows. I'm sorry, but this shit is so fire. Then a second van that's blue pulls up, and then robber 3 gets out while both the driver and the security guard are tied up. They unload the money from the money truck into the blue van. Also, I don't know if I mentioned this earlier, but all the robbers except robber 3 were dressed as security guards. It's definitely interesting. Then, of course, after the robbery, we just demonstrated this just for shits and giggles. Cop car pulls up on the blue van and finds $13,000 in loose bills parked just in the middle of nowhere. There's also something weird I can see about this, like when my friend mentioned, like, why did they leave $13,000 in it? They were in no rush. No one had anything on them. They've just disappeared. Like, there's no reason to leave any money in the van, but they did. And they also didn't find the gray van. Should also be mentioned that the Armored Motor Service of America, the company that sourced the armored cars, was also hit 13 months prior in Syracuse for about $2.9 million. And I don't believe they were caught either. I'm not 100% sure on that one. Also, since the business was demolished and it doesn't actually give us a location of where the van pulled off, we're going to show you where we think these happened right now. So this is where the business was. We're like pretty sure of this because this is the corner of the road, and this is like the only spot where we think a business could be. And right now we're going to show you the service road where we believe that it was adjacent to the cornfield and where the van pulled off, because it does fit the criteria pretty well. It's very well forested. I'm not sure if there's a hill there, but I also know that it goes about 350 feet back to the other cornfield. So I believe that's where the van pulled off, and is about 3/4 of a mile away. Alright, so I also forgot to add this part of the video. It's just basically showing what the suspects possibly look like. The first suspect, which is on the left, was seen the day before the robbery lurking near the site where the truck was emptied, and he looked to be in his mid to late 40s, of course in 1990, and was about 5'8" and looked to weigh around 180 pounds. And then the second suspect, which is the right one, was seen behind the wheel of the gray van parked next to the truck at the convenience store the day of the robbery. And he looked to be Puerto Rican or Italian descent. I don't know how you mix those two up, but that's what it says. He looked to be in his mid-30s to mid-40s, and then he also had dark hair and a mustache. And then the third suspect, which is in the center, was later seen driving the same gray van after the robbery, and he seemed to be in his mid-30s and was between 5'10" and 6 foot with dark hair and a mustache. Alright, so me and Aiden, I'm just unknown. We're going to go over what we think happened. So basically, Albert did that shit.
Albert definitely did that shit. He was in on it. How the fuck did the dude who got in it have keys?
And how did the the porthole on the armored truck conveniently just be broken where he could just poke a shotgun at him?
And how come they decided exactly where to stop off for food? How they knew they were going to be there when only 4 people knew about the fucking route? It doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, he was in on that shit. And we also might have not told you like the whole story. This is in 1990. And now I'm also going to go to 1992 when Albert and his father were in the heat because they were suspected of planning the whole thing.
So it was discovered that where the robbery took place after they were driven to this location by the cornfield, Albert's father lived very close to this property. I'm not sure exactly where. It wasn't necessarily disclosed, but we know it's very near to where this happened.
So in 1992, along with being suspected, they were actually arrested, and their property was searched, but they didn't find anything. Also, an informant confessed to his involvement in the robbery, but it ended up that informant was in prison at the time of the robbery, so that didn't really make sense. That didn't get anywhere. And then in June 1995, the statute of limitations ran out on the case, so they could not search Albert or his father anymore because they didn't find anything. So after the cops cleared Albert and his dad, in 2000 during an undercover drug investigation, Albert and his former defense attorney for the case went to a hotel room to purchase about $87,000 worth of cocaine. Also, the defense attorney's name was Anthony Leonardo Jr. Albert boasted to the FBI informant in the room that he burned about $100,000 of the stolen money from the armored bank heist in his barbecue in his backyard. He also admitted to spending about $600,000 on various goods and drugs, like a lot of drugs. Shortly after this undercover drug investigation, 44-year-old nightclub owner Anthony Vaccaro was shot and killed while driving along a road. Now, also after this drug investigation, they didn't arrest Albert because they wanted to get more information and just build a better case on him, I guess. Shortly after this incident, both Albert and his defense lawyer were arrested for conspiracy to distribute cocaine. Leonardo later pleaded guilty to drug and conspiracy to commit murder charges. He also claimed that he and Albert were planning to kill Anthony. Albert reportedly murdered Anthony because Leonardo convinced him that he was stealing money from the restaurant that was used to launder some of the money in the armored truck heist. Albert then pleaded guilty to murder and also to charges of racketeering. And after his plea deal, he ended up getting 30 years in a federal prison in New York. His defense lawyer was released on parole in 2013. And also, Albert never named his 3 accomplices. And the second security guard was cleared and really never suspected. In total, including the $13,000 that was found in the van, and the $87,000 that was used to buy cocaine to the FBI informant, that means only $100,000 of the $10.8 million was ever recovered and ever found. Albert possibly could have laundered this money through his restaurant, a limousine business that he possibly owned, and also he was a contractor that he could have laundered money through. So yeah, that was the armored truck robbery that happened in Rochester in 1990. I just haven't really seen any videos about it. I know I explained it like shit. My first time ever doing it like this, but I just think it's a interesting situation where they just completely got away with it. If I'm correct, I think it's one of the largest technically unsolved robberies in US history, and no one ever talks about it. It needs attention. Alright, see y'all.